All right, peace and greetings. Peace. We're getting that started. Just gonna give everybody a couple minutes to get in and we'll start. I'm just gonna wait another minute or two, then we're gonna go ahead and start. Give people a chance to slide over here. Brother Mandel is born. What's going on, brother? This clip from one of the initiation rituals we did, this drummer. Again, this is myself, Brother Jack, and Mike. Keep digging through these clips. This was, I think, from 2017. Let's say February or March of 2017. One more minute, and then we're just going to go ahead and begin. I'm going to go through some quick announcements. All right, peace and greetings to all the gods and goddesses on the path doing the real works. Real quick before we begin, just going to go through some quick announcements. One, obviously, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe option. Also, if you want to get notifications, you also, just like any other YouTube channel, you have to hit the bell, the notification bell. That will give you notifications of any new videos that upload or anytime that I go live on the channel. Also hit the like button. The more likes on the videos, which I didn't even know, believe it or not, until recently, it expands the channel showing up on more search engines. So it gives the channel it spreads it out more and gives more people the opportunity to come across it. So again, hit the like button so the channel can definitely spread and reach people that might be interested in this information. Also upcoming events, the 27th of this month, which believe it or not is only 10 days away. I feel like I say that shit every month. We will be having the Ritual of the Spider Goddess, Arachne. That'll be Friday, September 27th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in Fort Lauderdale. The cutoff day to request an invite, if you would like to attend that ritual, is going to be Wednesday, September 25th, which is next Wednesday. After that, we will not take any more invites. That will be the last day. Also, right around the corner after that is our Journey of the Black Adept Conference #2, which is now coming together. We are working on the itinerary, getting that organized with all the speakers and the presentations. I know those that have reached out and registered, you should have received information today, location, what time we start on Friday the 25th. Again, that'll be 3 days of different workshops, classes, presentations, and rituals. And that'll be October 25th to the 27th here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. If you would like information on that upcoming event, that 3-day event, Journey of the Black Adept Conference #2, shoot me an email. You see it right there in the description box, khnum19@gmail.com. If you are interested in a spiritual consultation or a reading, please, when you email me, specify which one. If you don't know the difference between the two, a consultation is a free for all. You can use it for whatever you want. It could be a one-on-one question and answer session with me about anything you want to talk about. If you need information or guidance or a discussion on aspects of the path, could be any topic. Setting, it could be, ritualistic work, whatever you choose to use it for. A reading is specifically using a divination system where we contact the spirits. The type of readings that I do offer are Goetia readings with Lucifer and the Goetia demons, a reading with the spirits of the dead, an Egyptian rune reading with the Orishi, or a reading with the Vodun and the Loa deities. If you have a preference, specify in your email, along with days and times you're available and the time zone you live in. Very important. If you're on the East Coast, West Coast, middle portion of the United States, or out of the country, that's very important so we can synchronize the correct times that work for both of us. That information, if you would like information on that, same thing, just hit me up on the email, khnum19@gmail.com. Also, the show with Richard K. Page that was supposed to be this past Saturday. Something came up at last minute. That will be this Saturday. We're starting a 1 hour earlier than we were originally. So I just want to put that out there. I know some people emailed me about that. So that show with Richard K. Page, who is a world-renowned Luciferian and author. We will be going in on Luciferian practices and principles and kind of breaking down what that path involves. If that's one of your interests, you definitely don't want to miss that show. That's going to be this Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this Saturday, right here on Primordial Chaos YouTube. Again, I have it on also the Primordial Chaos Instagram and Facebook page. I will put it on there leading up to it and reminding people, because we never really do a show on a Saturday afternoon. So I'll just look for that more throughout the week. But again, Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Richard K. Page. Also, I know some of you have emailed me and I've gotten back to you. I will be doing a class on Saturday, November 2nd. It's a private class on Lilith, working with Lilith magic, how to connect with her energy, rituals, practices. We'll be talking a little bit about sex magic too, how to work with sigils, etc. We'll be going in, in depth, obviously in private stuff we can't really talk about openly here on a forum like this. If you're interested in signing up for that class, again, send me an email, same email. That's going to be Saturday, November 2nd, 3 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. I'll keep putting that out there, even though that's a little bit, it's not too far out, but I'll keep pumping it out there over the next several weeks. So if you're interested in signing up for that Lilith class, shoot me an email and I'll send you the information, obviously, on that. I think that covers I don't think I missed anything. That's kind of what we got going on. And again, khnum19@gmail.com for any of the aforementioned information. So you see the title, what I want to kind of talk about tonight. I did a two-part series on the 120, the lessons of the 120, the 5% nation, which I got a great response from it. But before I begin, I want to make a disclaimer. And I have the utmost respect for the gods and the earths of the 5% nation, the nation of gods and earths. Obviously, years back, it was probably the first level of spiritual consciousness, if you want to call it that. I'm just using the term that I was introduced to. I'm going to say back in 1988, 87, going into 88, which I stayed in that probably for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then got introduced obviously to the anti-rule community and went through that whole bullshit. But this was my first introduction to any form of spiritual consciousness. I've always considered it my roots, my foundation, even though I spent a short while in it. And recently I started going back and I said to myself, being on the path of left-hand path, the occult, I said, let me go back and look at these lessons now from an occult perspective. So I want to make that clear. This is my perspective on it, looking through the eyes, as an occultist. So I want to make that clear. This is not, and I know there will be many 5%ers that are not going to see it my way, and they're not supposed to. Though there are many that do, and kind of like the breakdown I did a little while back, and I'm still very good friends with a lot of gods and earths. So again, I have the utmost respect for the nation. I have the utmost respect for Father Allah, and that's why I'm going to do something on this tonight. So again, I want to make this clear. This is from an occult perspective, from an esoteric perspective, like I did the first series. If you didn't see the first two-part series I did on this, I can't remember when that shit was. Might have been earlier this year or at the end of last year. I can't remember, but it's in the archives. You'll see it. It's a two-part series I did on the lessons, breaking down the 120 from an occult perspective. And I'm kind of going to expound on that a little bit tonight. I'm going to go into the flag, the universal flag, which I think has serious occult hidden meanings to it that go on a deeper level. Now, this is my personal opinion as I go back and evaluate it now. I do believe Father Allah was way ahead of his time. And we have to keep in mind what he did back during them times, during the civil rights movement in the 60s, was tougher. Took a lot of balls, for lack of a better word. Took a lot of courage, a lot of strength. I'm going to go into a little bit of history of him in a few minutes, where he was born, how he got to New York, how kind of, the 5% nation began after he broke off. There's a lot of misconceptions of, for those that may not be familiar, of why he broke off from the Nation of Islam. Really not that complicated. But what he did, as I'm going to go into, I think was very unique and took a lot of courage. Now, one thing I've always found unique, now the 5%ers have never, ever considered themselves a conscious movement. They don't even like that term. So I won't really refer to it as a conscious group. But for so-called conscious groups that claim to have information, whether you agree with the 5% teachings or not, and I'm going to dispel some of the mythologies in it. One thing I must commend the nation for, they have stayed consistent at what they've done. And a lot of groups can't say that. A lot of groups have not really been able to stand the test of time. But one thing that's been unique, about the 5% nation is there's a term we used to always use, living mathematics, right? They've been able to change with the times, but stay true to the core of the lessons and the teachings. Now, remember, in the nation, there's something we always say as add on to the build. And they're constantly adding on to the information, update it and bring it in real time. And I think that's important with any doctrine. And I don't see that with a lot of other doctrines, not to knock them, but I don't see that with other conscious so-called movements out there. Let's say the Nation of Islam. That could be a whole show in itself. Other groups like the Nuwapians, they just go to complete fuckeryville. That's a whole nother story in itself. But there's no staying to the core of the teachings, but yet evolving and changing with the times. Now, something that I find unique, as I said, with the 5% Nation, they've done that. There's been a lot of debate over, let's say, the Nation of Islam today. Are they still, true to the core teachings of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught? And I'd have to say no, and most would tell you no. And kind of, we're going to go through who he was known as Clarence 13X, inside the Nation of Islam, why he left, Masjid number 7 in New York City. But again, they've stayed true to the core of the teachings. And a lot of groups can't say that, if that's what you want to call it. Now, I want to also make this clear. One might read the lessons, if you're not familiar, I'm talking now maybe to those that are not familiar with the 5% teachings and the 120 lessons. It's people get the misinterpretation that they've been labeled a hate group or a racist group. That's not true if you really read the lessons and the degrees. And they make it clear they're not pro-black or a pro-black movement, and they're not an anti-white group. But sometimes when truth is being conveyed in information, people can misinterpret it as that and take it personal. They've made that clear from the very beginning and the foundation. No matter how many times they've said that, people still pass judgment because they don't really understand the teaching. So that's why I said they don't like to be called a conscious group or movement, and they don't like to be called pro-black, because they're about civilizing people regardless of what you are teaching. Civilization. And civilization is having knowledge of self. You always hear me talk about knowledge of self. And it's funny because whether a lot of these authors that write books on the left-hand path are conscious or not, that is a theme point that is prominent on the left-hand path, knowledge of self. That is a popular phrase that is used constantly, or verbiage that's used constantly by gods and earths and throughout the degrees and the lessons. That's step one. You must have knowledge of self. That is very Luciferian in nature, and I talked a little bit about that last time. And the 5%ers, they believe that they are the gods, fathers of civilization, gods of the universe, right? They don't believe in a spook or a mystery god. Okay, we say the same thing on the left-hand path. We don't worship or look for spook or mystery gods, right? Now, obviously, a 5%er who is not conscious of Luciferianism or left-hand path or occult information, they're not going to look at it like that. But really, when you make a statement like that, there's a lot of Luciferian principles encoded in the 5% lessons. And I'm just saying, if you're looking at it, I want to make this clear. If you're looking at it from an occult perspective, you can get a lot out of it. So what I've done in the last couple of years, as I've, again, had to dust off my lessons and re-pick them back up and then say, you know what, let me go through these in depth. And let me, how do I perceive it now, knowing what I know now and being through what I've been through over the last 10, 15 plus years. I said, wow, these degrees, these lessons stand the test of time. And it's up to you as a god, it's up to you as an earth or a goddess, whatever term. And I know they don't like that term for females. Because we'll get into that with the universal flag. But regardless, when you look at these degrees or these lessons, you can see how they still apply today. But you have to be the individual. How do you perceive them and how you can apply them to yourself? Now, is everybody going to look at them in the same way? Obviously not. That would be ridiculous. And that's why, we in the nation, we have ciphers, builds, because as a god, you must show, improve, and demonstrate your wisdom by way of your knowledge and understanding in a cipher to build. And if you can't do that, then you can't show and prove that you're God. And I'm not talking about just memorizing the degrees, memorizing the 1 to 10. the 1 to 40, etc. The student enrollment and all that. I'm not talking about, yes, that's man, that used to be, and again, it still is for the most part today. Before you could even wear your universal flag, you had to be at a certain level. You couldn't just put on the flag. And that's good because a lot of that stuff is lost. Obviously now with technology, it's easy to get access to things. Yes, you can find the degrees online. But again, as I said in that previous video, back then you weren't given all the degrees all the lessons at one shot. You were given them in pieces. And when you mastered a portion of them, then you were given the next set. But before, and that's very Masonic in nature, by the way, because that's how the Masonic Lodge does it. Before you can go to different degrees in the Masonic Lodge, and I'm telling you this, being raised up as a Master Mason in the Blue Lodge, before you can go to the next degree, you have to show proficiency. So there is if you look at the degrees and what Father Allah did, and obviously those that study know, if you look at the Nation of Islam or the 5% Nation, you can see some Masonic structuring, whether it was intentional or unintentional. It's there. So you had to show proficiency in your degrees before you can kind of, move on to the next phase. Well, they do the same thing in Masonry. And I've said this before, and most lodges do this. When I went through, whatever group you went through, that was the group you stayed with till you got raised as a Master Mason, right? And you had to study with that group, and you had a what we would call a monitor or somebody that was kind of like a teacher that would guide you, and he would be assigned to the group, and you would have to show proficiency in your degrees. And once you memorize the whole degree, and your teacher felt you were ready, he would present it to the lodge, and you would go in. The group would come in at the lodge, and he would just point, and you'd have to rattle off the degrees. No certain order they were going, so you had to know the whole thing. It wasn't like you do this part, you do this part, you do this part, you do this part. They would just point to a brother, boom, point to a brother, and you just had to flip it off at your tongue. And then you would depart the lodge, and then the craft would vote, were you guys proficient enough? If they unanimously voted, then you would be approved to go to the next degree. Well, in a sense, the 5% Nation uses the same structure. You have to show proficiency in your degrees before they feel you were able to move on to the next set of degrees. I'm not talking about today. Yeah, anybody can get their hands on all the degrees, and anybody, can make a claim to be this or that. And that's entirely up to the individual, but that's not how it was done back in the day. You had to earn your lessons. You had to earn your degrees. And again, you usually came up under somebody, because each god would take on 7 other gods to raise them up, while their firstborns, etc. We'll get into a little bit about that. So again, it was about proficiency. Now, I bring out all that up to say, what do I always say on this path? It's about doing work, right? You can't lay claim to having all these titles just because you've read a book. I don't care on what subject matter it's on. That doesn't make you the master or the guru of that, because you read a book and you memorized a bunch of information, right? And it doesn't mean anything. Same thing. You can memorize all the degrees in the 5% Nation, but can you show and prove your wisdom? Can you show your knowledge, your wisdom, and understanding on these degrees by adding on to the build as a god or as an earth, right? Do you have that ability? So it wasn't just about your proficiency, wasn't just based on did you memorize the degrees. It was now your knowledge is weak if you can't show and demonstrate and prove that by your wisdom, right? This is important because whether we're conscious of it or not, we use that same concept on this path. I know I do. I know anybody that's firm on the path really likes to gauge people by the work that they put in and the consistency of that work. And this is what this was about. It's no different. If you're not consistent at what you do and you do not put in work, I can guarantee you will not get any concrete results. All right. So I just want to go through some of those basic things. So what I want to do now is just go through a brief history of the man they call Father Allah. Who was it? Let's get a little background on him for those that may not know. And again, I look, There'll be just like any other great leader that's come along in the past. There'll be people out there finding fault, right, with any leader that came and did something that was concrete. I'm talking about ridiculous fault. I'm not talking about doing some atrocity, let's say like a Dr. York, who's a pedophile and molesting kids. Now, I'm not talking about shit like that. I'm talking about, well, he used to smoke, he used to drink. Listen, if you look hard at anything, you're going to find something wrong. But if you're going to nitpick about human frailties like that, so I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in finding minute character flaws. All right. If you were an axe murderer, a pedophile, a rapist, a violent criminal, all those other things that are personality flaws that we all have on some level, let's keep it real. All right. I don't focus on that stuff. I try to focus on what we can take and utilize and apply to ourselves, to grow and evolve from. That's the key. All right. So for those that may not be familiar with who Father Allah is and a brief history of him, I'm just going to go through a couple of things real quick, just so you can get a general idea. All right. Allah was born Clarence Smith, February 22nd, 1928, in Danville, Virginia. He was the fifth son of Lewis and Mary Smith, family of 7 children. And that's why he had the name and the Nation of Islam before he broke off and left the nation and started the 5% Nation. That's why he was known as Clarence 13X, right? Danville is an independent city in Virginia, bounded by Pittsylvania County, Virginia, and Caswell County, North Carolina. It was the last capital of the Confederate States of America. The Smith family lived at 834 Valley Street in the 1940s. Allah's mother, Mary, moved to New York. She rented an apartment in Harlem. In 1946, at the age of 18, Allah came north to join his mother and older brother. So we see the man we know as Allah, Father Allah, came to New York City in 1946. For those that may not know, how did he get there? What was his foundation? As you see, he was originally from Virginia. And when his mother moved in 1945, he came a little bit later at the age of 18, just so we have a history here, right? In 1946, he, Allah, met Willeen Jowers. Allah and Willeen had 2 sons together, A. Allah, Clarence Jowers, and B. Allah, Otis Jowers, born in 1949 and 51, respectively. However, this relationship did not last, and he, Allah, married another woman whom he loved very much by the name of Dora, his second wife. And Dora had 4 children, Christine, Deborah, Clarence, C. Allah, and Perry, P. Allah, because of the letter, because of the first name. Allah's 7th child was a son by an earth named Gavasia and was named after Allah. On October 30th, 1952, Allah joined the army and had service time in Japan. And in the Korean War, he endured time in Korea and was honorably released on August 21st, 1954, and entered active reserve duty to finish out his time. He was on active duty reserve from August 22nd, 1954 to September 30th, 1960, in which he was again honorably released. A lot of people don't know that Father Allah served his country. You don't hear about this, right? So he wasn't anti-American, anti-hate. He served an 8-year period and was honorably discharged twice. So this was a man that honorably served his country, and that's never talked about. I want to point that out. All right. While he was away, his wife Dora had become a Muslim and entered the Nation of Islam under the leadership of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So now we're going to get a little connection of this is how he got introduced first to the Nation of Islam. This is very important to understand because there's a lot of false history circulating out there about Father Allah. People give their interpretations and opinions on how he encountered the nation and why he left. Why he left gets a little bit more personalized, but you'll find those who are anti 5% Nation, I found have a messed up explanation or twist on it. So let's get a little bit of history of that because this is important to understand. All right. When Allah returned, he too accepted the teachings of Islam and he joined her at Temple number 7 under Minister Malcolm X. All right. He studied his lessons hard and soon became very proficient with them. The lessons developed him in a fiery wisdom and he had a speaking style that was unique to him. It was a methodical cadence stressing syllables that normally aren't. It was hypnotic. I personally believe, it's just me, I believe Father Allah was definitely connected to that spiritual realm, just by a lot of these attributes that you see, just by, as I said, the fiery wisdom. He was one of those that obviously would stand out in the crowd. He was unique. He was different because of his fire for the information. We should have that same passion and fire on this path, that same dedication. But unfortunately, that can piss some people off, because if they feel like they're being outshined, or maybe it's not making them look good, that's where the jealousy and all the other bullshit kicks in. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. All right. It was at this point that turmoil began to develop with him in the temple. Allah had been a man who always thought for himself. Listen, that thought, we all should be thinking for ourselves. We never should be told what to fucking do, or people tell us what we can and cannot do. So the thing that happened as he started studying the lessons, he started to see that he was God, right? And there was a conflict. And I still to this day got a conflict. And I do know some brothers from the Nation of Islam, some I grew up with and went to school with. And we have these, they can get a little heated, not in a bad way. I know when I go back to New York and see some of them, they can get a little heated, because there's a variance of a difference of opinion of that concept, who and what is God. We'll get into that in a second. But this was one of the key points why Father Allah left the nation. There was a difference of perspective on who and what God was, because you can't say that the black man is God or your God, but then there's overtones of worshiping a spook or a spirit God. There was a problem with that, but let's read a little bit further. This was probably one of the key points of why he left, obviously, in addition to all the personal bullshit. All right. Then it goes on to say, at this point in time, the teachings of the Nation of Islam was that W.D. Farr, the man who came to North America and taught Elijah Muhammad, was the supreme being, Allah. He had a problem with that. I have a problem with that. And that's one reason why I can never gravitate towards those teachings. In 1963, Allah left the temple, meaning temple number 7. He had come to a realization that would have a far more reaching implication, a realization that would shake New York City. He knew from the lessons while in the temple that the original man was the supreme being God. What he now realized was that was applied to him individually, meaning he accepted that. He all right, the Nation of Islam will tell you that W.D. Farr was an incarnation of Allah in the flesh, right? Which you can't then flip that, turn around and say the original man is God. But then there's still that overtone of religion of this mystery God. Now, Fard is a mystery God if you've never seen him. That's a fact. So any enrolled member of NOI that comes in today, they never saw Fard. So if they accept that, they're accepting a mystery God. The other problem I had with that, and I'm just saying when you look at it from a perspective of how the NOI breaks down race, and the white man, when you look at W.D. Fard, he doesn't look like an Asiatic black man. He looks kind of British. He kind of looks like Prince Charles if you really look at him. So it's kind of contradictory to sit there and call all white people devils, but yet W.D. Fard looks like a white man. Now, they say in the teachings he looks like that because one of his parents was white and the other one was black, and he came in that persona so he could appeal to the masses. Well, if you're all knowing all Allah don't need no tricks or no games like that to do some stupidity like that. I really look at it like it was more religion. It was more religious indoctrination. That's still that man worship, focusing some externally outside of ourselves. It don't make sense. And you can't sit there. Even when you look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, obviously, and he was a great man. Obviously, when you look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you don't see a pure 100% Asiatic black man. He kind of looks Oriental mixed with black. I mean, we're all mixed, right? Especially in this day and time. Who really is 100% pure African? It doesn't exist, regardless of what individual might think. And it doesn't mean just because you got dark skin, woolly hair that makes you original. Shit, if you're still getting dry skin, ashy, and dandruff, that shows your genes and genetics have been mixed with the European man too. So there was a lot of contradictions in that, right? We're going to get into that. So he had a problem with that. On one hand, you're telling me WD fraud is the law in the flesh. On the other hand, you're saying the original man is God. Then why is there still this focus on man worship? I have this debate with a lot of NOI brothers to this day, and it goes nowhere because they actually make a form of salat or prayer, which bugs me the fuck out. Like, why are you making salat or prayer to who you praying to if you believe that the original man is God? Who are you praying to? If you're Allah, you're God, who are you making salat or prayer to? And there's no concrete answer. Now, in my opinion, there's a lot of great things that Farrakhan has done and that I agree with. And there's a lot of things that I completely disagree with. I believe he has been smart enough to infuse a lot of modern day religions in with the NOI teachings, because it can come off as very Christian, and I get it, but I think it goes against the core of the lessons and the teachings, and that's the issue. If you really were honest and you knew the history and you studied the degrees, you really couldn't say that they stay firm to the core of the teachings of the lessons. All right. So these were some of the issues, right? So then it goes on to say, he now realized that it applied to him individually, being God, that he as an individual was God and therefore could not sit by and depend upon a mystery God to do what he himself was blessed with, meaning the abilities to do. Well, that's why we come on this path. We understand that we have within us the ability to be a God, right? We know that the power of God resides within us. We're not going to sit around and wait for some mystery God, you understand, to put food on our table, to pay our bills, clothing on our backs, to take care of our children. This is what he was saying. Wait, I'm not. He was like, man, forget this. This shit's taking us back into another form of Christianity and Judaism. So we shun on this path, same thing, like the nation of gods and earth. We don't sit around waiting for a mystery God to provide food, clothing, and shelter. Try it. See what happens. If you believe in a mystery God, sit around and pray for food. Pray for your bills to be paid. I guarantee you, you'll be out on the street within a few weeks' time. So if you don't get up off your butt and do things for yourself, and that's why I keep saying part of being a God is being responsible. Responsible for your actions and your choices and your decisions you make. And that's why I say whatever situation you're in it because of the decisions you make, not because of some spooky spiritual karma. All karma is cause and effect. And part of that karma, a lot of it is centered around the decisions you make. There's causes and effects for those decisions. It's nothing spooky. Stop making this shit more spooky and space cadet it out than it actually is. So all of these things we're seeing up to this point, and this is why, to me, what makes him different than any of these other so-called leaders in the past. And again, I just don't think Father Allah is given the credit, let's say, as a Noble Drew Ali or as a Marcus Garvey, right? We have a man that did something great, right, inside the fabric of America during a very racist time. Remember, he was doing all this during the civil rights movement, during the time of Martin Luther King. And there's a connection that he had with Martin Luther King that nobody talks about, which I'll get a little bit into that. I just don't think enough of light is shed on this man and what he did. All that's talked about is the stupid shit. Right? All right, let's go a little bit more into this, all right? So we see this is why he left. So I want to make this clear. Contrary to what you might have heard, these were the issues he had, all right? He changed his name from Clarence 13X to Allah. That pissed the nation off, right? Oh, how can you call yourself Allah? See, well, why can all of us, if we all say we're God, if God, and he broke it down, arm, leg, arm, head, right? Why are you getting upset? But it goes to show subconsciously they still were worshiping and believing in a mystery or a spook God. They would tell you on the surface they don't, but they were, okay? So he changed his name. He stopped carrying the temple name. As you know, when you become enrolled in the temple, you take a name with a number and the X on the end of it for unknown, which to me always was stupid, but that's a whole nother story. So he changed his name from Clarence 13X to Allah and went to the streets of Harlem to do God's duty. God's duty, as he saw it, would be to teach the blind, the deaf, and the dumb people. And from them, he raised the 5% nation. Allah taught 9 young brothers who became known as the first 9 born. His first student he named Kareem, Matthew Johnson, later became the Black Messiah, was a nickname, not Black Messiah like Jesus. Allah chose him to be the first youth with this knowledge because of his ability to attract the youth in the community and because he was a black seed, meaning a dark complexion. That's why he was called the Black Messiah, because he was sent to the youth metaphorically to bring salvation via the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding of the degree. So I want to make that clear. All right, so let's not run with that. Thus, these 9 black youths came to be known as the first 9 born, and they were Kareem, known as the Black Messiah, Al-Salam, which means the peace, Al-Jabbar, which is the mighty, if you know any Arabic, known as firstborn Prince Allah, Al-Jamel, Nilim, known as Bismi Allah, Akbar Bilal, known as ABG number 7. Now I found this interesting, which is a left-hand path name of a left-hand path deity, Ahuru, Uhu, right? Now I don't think they knew that then, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of shit encoded in here, all right? So that's how the first brief history of the first students were formed. I'm going to finish with this last section. A little bit of the history and its connection with the assassination. And a lot of people don't know when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot, he was one of the key components and was recognized afterwards for trying to keep the peace on the streets when riots and shit broke out. And that's never talked about. Nobody ever hears about that. He was actually commended by the New York City Police Department for doing that. And this is the thing that I'm saying that's never talked about with the Nation of Gods and Earth, because they're always labeled as some racist hate group. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. You'll never see that. I've never seen it. Now, they won't shy away from teaching the truth. And sometimes truth cuts like a sword. It's painful, right? It's like drinking something sweet and bitter. It's sweet to the tongue and bitter to the belly. And truth sometimes isn't for everybody. So sometimes that truth people took personal, all right? So let me finish with this brief history. I'm almost done, and then I'm going to go into something else. But I want to get through some. This is just some of the key points of his life. We're almost finished. All right. On May 31st, 1965, Allah was speaking at the rally in front of the Hotel Teresa that was located at 2090 7th Avenue in Manhattan when 2 police officers attempted to break up the rally. As a result, a disturbance was brought about. Allah, along with several other brothers, was arrested for unlawful assembly and disorderly conduct, which is a tactic they used a lot back then when any time a group would gather. At the arraignment in criminal court before Judge Francis X. O'Brien, he told the judge that he was wrong for accusing the righteous people and that the city would blow up. When offered a lawyer, he told the judge that he was Allah and that he would represent himself. That didn't go over too well. That September, the judge in the Supreme Court, Part 30, ordered him to be placed in the custody of the psychiatric unit in Bellevue Hospital for psychiatric treatment. So just because they didn't understand what he was talking about, they thought he was crazy, right? This was the result of him proclaiming himself to be God Allah. While at Bellevue, he continued to teach the youth, and the authorities transferred him to Manhattan State Hospital for the criminally insane as a means of separating him from a growing nation. This sounds familiar. That's what they do. In returning to New York City in the year of 1967, the 5% held the first parliament in Mount Morris Park, April 30th, 1967, to welcome Allah home. Early that summer, Allah's Street Academy opened at 2122 7th Avenue, July 1967, where it is still to this day and has a lifelong lease from the city. And they actually have been renovating it the last couple of years. And they still do classes there. And obviously that's Mecca. You still got Medina and Brooklyn. I mean, you still got chapters all across the world. You even have a Japanese chapter of 5%ers. Yes, it's that diverse. You will see Arabs. Anybody that's part of the bloodline of the original people, you will see from all walks of life. Latinos, Arabs, Asians, blacks. That's how diverse and universal the nation is, but It's not really drawn upon. If you have ever been to a universal parliament or seen this, you could even pull up videos on their channel. You could see some of what I'm talking about. And I've been subscribed to the channel since it originally came on. All right. All right. So where did I leave off here? Okay, here we go. Excuse me. At that same year, Universal Sham God presented a law with the emblem, and I'm going to get into the flag next, that he designed, and it was ordained as our universal flag. That was the first flag, and we're going to talk about that. The emblem is painted on the window of the Street Academy, and it was put on pins that we wear on our lapels. Remember, they first used a symbol that was very similar to the Nation of Islam, but then that drastically got changed when Universal Sham God came up with the flag that's still used to this day. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. All right. On April 5th, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. This sent shockwaves throughout the Black communities across the country. The immediate reaction of the masses of Black people was to riot and loot the stores with their own communities. In Harlem that night, large crowds of people gathered on the streets. The 5%ers were also out in force. Recognizing the tendency of the 85% to react violently without any consideration of who, what, and where, and how to execute their desire for justice. The 5% moved throughout the crowds, reinforcing peace. This helped to avert a shamble and the Black community holding the bag. Allah received public and media praises for his participation in maintaining peace and order. He also received a commendation from Mayor John V. Lindsay of the outstanding job he was doing in providing motivation for the educational and vocational growth in and with the youth. That's not talked about enough. On June 12, 1969, Allah awoken at the home of his mother. He told her that it was the best rest he had ever had. In the 2 previous years, from June 1969, Allah had risen to become a very powerful figure in New York City. He had achieved a kind of international celebrity status. The Canadian television did a story on him. A sociologist from Sweden interviewed him, and he had plans to meet with Chinese representatives on June 20th, 1969. In 1968, Allah started giving indication to the 5%ers that he would be departing. He would tell us things like, after this year, you won't be 5% anymore. You'll be the nation of gods and earths. So they use that more today. Don't really refer to themselves as the 5% nation anymore because of this. They're more known by the title of the nation of gods and earths. On the night of June 12th, 1969, Allah was at his Street Academy speaking with the brothers who were there. He spoke with us well into the morning of June 13th, 1969. He was speaking about male and female relationships. Those who were present still remember to this day the euphoric feeling so good that we didn't notice that the yellow cab, whose taxi that Allah got into, wasn't the cab of ALR, Harry Smith, his brother, that he usually left with. Shortly after Allah had left the Street Academy, word came back to the school that Allah had been brutally gunned down in the elevator of the Martin Luther King Towers on 112th Street in East Harlem. He was hit 7 of 8 times with a powerful blast fired by his assailants. This was in the morning of June 13th, 1969. Allah was 41 years old when he departed from us. Peace. All right. So that's a brief history. I'm about to go into 2 other things. Obviously, he was targeted. He was assassinated. 41 years old. Right. And I want to point out, what he was doing at that time, the political climate and the race climate that was going on with this country. As you see early, he sensed it. He told his people that he felt it. He wasn't going to be here much longer. And obviously, there's more stories when you read the history. There was more attempts, more skirmishes. There's a lot of theories on who was behind that. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories. Some people have said there was bitter NOI members. I mean, that's only speculation. We really can't prove that. Some have said it was counter-pro intelligence, the FBI, the CIA. Obviously, if you go online, you can pull up We know J. Edgar Hoover was notorious for infiltrating any conscious movements at that time, especially African Black conscious movements. And you could pull up through the Freedom of Information Act, they kept an encyclopedia on Father Allah and the 5% Nations, and they were monitored as a threat simply because of what they were teaching. So, I mean, do that research yourself. And that usually happens when somebody like him comes along and made an impact. So what was the difference of what he was doing per se and the Nation of Islam? Obviously, it was a difference in the teachings and the approach on who and what Allah or God was. Probably was the biggest difference that we just briefly went over. But I think his focus was more on the youth and the children. And I think that is a problem that still filters down to us today as adults. What do I mean by that? Sometimes we get wrapped up in our bullshit as adults and we think it's about us, right? We think this is about me, I. And then we wonder why the youth is so messed up today, or so jacked up, why they're so out there, why they ain't got no discipline, why they ain't got no knowledge, no wisdom, no understanding. Why is because it's our responsibility to teach and educate, not be preachy. I want to make that clear. The youth don't respond to that, and he saw that. So he went and brought this information to the youth, to the children, because he knew that was going to make the difference and break the cycle. What good is it if we got a bunch of old adults walking around with egos, I'm this and I'm that, and blah, 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 and blah. We do that today, unfortunately. We think, oh, I'm so high and mighty, I got some knowledge and some information. But he believed passing this on and teaching the youth would break that cycle of mental and spiritual indoctrination. And it did. And this is why a lot of the things I teach and my influences come from the foundation of these teachings. I say the same thing. You must set the example for your children. You must teach and educate them, not force them, not be preachy, because that didn't work. And one thing Father Allah did that was unique, he let the youth, he kind of created that harmony between being a child, experiencing life, and he had a hard knocks way of learning. He let them fall and learn life lessons hard. It wasn't that type of forced, rigid, religious type of structure that a lot of people try to utilize, because that don't work. So he had a gift and a methodology and an approach that he was able to reach the youth. And again, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, you can pull up videos. One thing I find fascinating, there are some videos that people have revived and put on YouTube from some of them first beginnings in the 60s in New York. And it's crazy when you see it and you go back and you look on it, it's it's crazy. When I watch it, I'm like, wow, this is some impactful shit. And I think that was the difference in the approach. And he wasn't down with all of that as the nation had all, and I talk about it all the time in a lot of these groups and organizations, that hierarchy, that structure, and these titles, because that creates separation. All right. So there, again, that's just a brief history to give you a general idea of some facts that you may or may not have known about Father Allah, right? So what I want to go into, it's going to go through touch a few things on in the lessons, the structure of the lessons, not like I did last time. I'm just going to point out some key points. Obviously, some of the key components in those degrees, but what are some of the key structures of the doctrine, the degrees, and the lessons? All right, let's go through that. Well, first and foremost, okay, where you would start off, all right, you would have to know your supreme mathematics, your supreme alphabet, right? That was first and foremost, right? I've always said the supreme mathematics and supreme alphabets and the verbiage that's used through them, it communicates a higher spiritual language that activates portions of your psyche, whether you're conscious of it or not. It's very, very occultic. in my perspective. So how we communicate, let's look at today's date for an example. Everything was communicated in this universal language, right? So today is what? September 17th, 2009. If we broke that down with the mathematics or the alphabet, there's 2 days you can look at it. The supreme mathematics, you would look at 9 being born. We got born knowledge, God. We have wisdom, cipher, knowledge, cipher. I'm sorry, born. And then today being the 17th, we would take the 1 and 7. So we would say today, what's today's mathematics? Today would be knowledge, God. And then you would build on it from that. So what's your take on knowledge, God? Break that down. This was the language. Now you could correlate that to the mathematics or the alphabet, right? So if I went into the alphabet, 1 in the alphabet is a law, and 7 also is God. G represents the God. So we see the correlation connects on both levels. So I could say, if I correlated to the alphabet, I could say, all right, knowledge. What represents knowledge? A law. Who is a law? A law is the original man. Father of civilization, God of the universe. I'm God. I'm a representation of that knowledge, right? And if I took 7, I connect that to that, a law and God. It's not a coincidence. I find a lot of hidden meanings. This is just me and how I perceive it. It's not a coincidence that 1 is a law and 7 is God. When you look at the symbolicism of what that represents. That's just me and my take on it. So when I would connect the mathematics for this day and then connect it to the alphabet, I would perceive that as a hidden meaning and something for self. So how do I take that message and delve deeper into it for self? Because remember, the mathematics and the alphabet is about applying it to self as God. That would be showing forth your wisdom by way of your knowledge and your understanding. That's what it means to add on to a build, right? So that's why I was saying earlier in the beginning, it's not just about memorizing the shit. So for an example, if you were having a cipher and in that cipher, if you just gave the basic meaning of that, but didn't add on to the build, it showed you had no wisdom, right? It just means you memorize shit. What do I say on this path all the time? If you read a book on the occult or this path and you just regurgitating what you remembered, you're not demonstrating and showing forth your knowledge and your wisdom and your understanding. It just means you memorized a bunch of shit, right? So the supreme mathematics, 1 is knowledge, 2 is wisdom, 3 is understanding, 4 culture freedom, 5 power refinement, 6 equality, 7 God, 8 build to destroy, 9 born, 0 cipher, right? One would have to memorize that right out the gate. That was the first thing I had to memorize. Your supreme alphabets, right? Which correlate. Now, remember, when you're breaking down the signs with this, you can correlate the number to the letter. So let me give you an example. If today was 17, as I said again, I would take 1 and 7 here, right? I would do 2 things here. And I said before, 1 is Allah, 2 is God, okay? But then what I would also do is I would take the 1 and the 7 and I would add that together, get 8 in the alphabet, that's he or her. So who is God, right? There's your answer. And then if I took it to the alphabets, it would be build or destroy. In order to be God, you must build, but in order to build, you must destroy. So from an occult perspective, I must destroy those things about myself that are holding me back from being God. I must shed the ways that are making me weak. So this is all encoded. There's numerology in this. That's how I used to break down the alphabets and the math. Not everybody did it like that, but that's how I would build in a cipher. So not only would I just look at today's mathematics, we're in the month of born, right? Today is if we build on the mathematics, today is knowledge God. In the supreme alphabet, so it's a law God. If I take the 1 and 7, 8, I get build or destroy. In the alphabet, it's he or her, right? Now, if you really wanted to take it a step further, some shit I would like to do is I would add up the month, the day, and the year, and I'd see what number I get. So let's see, today is 10, 9, 1 is 10, 17, 2 is 19. I got 0, I got 20, and then I got 9, right? I would take the 2 and the 9, I would add it together, I get 11. 11 represents king, right? And I take king, if I take 11 in the mathematics, it would be knowledge, right? In order to be a king, you must have what? Knowledge. I could do this with any of these numbers. And this is why I'm trying to say, if you look at it from an occult perspective, it takes on a whole, I could do this shit all day. And this is how I kind of used to break down and correlate it, right? So you must know your mathematics, your alphabets, okay? A, law, B, born, C, D, divine, E, equality, F, father, G, God, H was he or her, I was I, like I, J was justice, K, king, L was love or hell, M was master, N was now N, O was cipher, P, shit, drawing a blank, power, Q, queen, T, truth, I'm sorry, R, ruler, S, self or savior, T, truth or square, U, hold on, I'm trying to remember, U, a universe, V, victory, W, wisdom, X was unknown, Y, and then obviously Z was zigzag, zig, which represented knowledge, wisdom, understanding. So that was a must. Those were the basics. So before you even got, which was next, your 1 to 10, your student enrollment, you had to understand. Now I'm trying to show you the structure because, as I said earlier in the beginning, it was kind of Masonic in nature as far as showing your proficiency in the degrees. You had to do that, right? So unlike today where anybody can get their hands on the degrees. Now, something that I always found interesting, there's also something in the lessons called the 12 Jewels of Islam, which are very basic common sense principles. And we should be striving for this on this path. Knowledge, wisdom, understanding, freedom, justice, equality, right? Food, clothing, shelter, peace, and happiness. Who wouldn't want to obtain that? Knowledge, wisdom, understanding, freedom, justice, equality, food, clothing, shelter, love, peace, happiness. These 12 Jewels of Islam is something we should be, I mean, it says it all. That's what you should be striving for. It says it all. Now, remember, they looked at Islam not as a religion, a way of life, not Islam and what we know Islam today. Let me stress that. And that's why you will see a lot of information where real gods on earth will tell you a true God or earth is not a Muslim God. A lot of people have mixed, I found Sunni Orthodox Islam, Nation of Islam, Islam with 5% teachings, and are calling themselves this fictitious thing called Muslim gods. The nation of gods on earth, when they say they practice Islam, I, self, Lord, and master is what it symbolizes. I, self, Lord, and master. They believe it's a way of life. What's that way of life? Peace. Now, in order to have peace, not fake illusionary peace, and this is where I get this from too, peace, making that inner chaos, making order out of that inner chaos. And that starts with understanding knowledge of self. That's my occult breakdown on it when I look at it now. But they believed it was a way of life, not a religion. No true nation, no true God or 5% consider themselves a Muslim in the sense of what we know Muslim as today. They don't make salat. They don't wear traditional Islamic garb. They don't look and read the Quran or break it down the way a traditional Muslim would. I want to make that clear. All right. So the 12 Jewels of Islam was key in the foundations. All right, and I'm not going to go through them. Next would be your student enrollment, which were the first 10 degrees. So you would have to memorize those before you could get your next, as they call, set of degrees. And again, that was done via your proficiency. The 1 to 36 would be next. And again, you can go back on the previous videos I did. I'm not going to go through them all for the sake of time. I'm just going to give you quickly the structure. That would be the next phase. And again, you'd have to show your proficiency in that before you can get your next set of degrees. And it was good that it was done like this, because if it wasn't, you'd have a lot of people out there thinking they knew something. All right. Then it was the 1 to 14 lost and found. But there's one thing I want to point out for those that may not be familiar with the term. Why were they calling themselves 5%ers? Where did that concept come from? Now I've heard stupid ass people refute this. I'm not 5%, I'm 100%. I don't think you understand the breakdown of it or where it came from. But we'll get to that in a minute. So then the 1 to 14 was next, right? You had to show proficiency in that. Okay. After the 1 to 14, now you get into the meat of it, which was the 1 to 40. Let's go to that real quick. Hold on. And it's something I want to point out. Now, again, some will come with the debate. Are some of the scientific and historical facts in those lessons, the 1 to 40, accurate? No. At that time, were they? Yes. But obviously, at that time, when these degrees were revealed, they were accurate. So people want to debate in this day, oh, well, you know, they're not scientifically sound. Of course, but that's why we add on and we build. That's why we call it living mathematics. It's your job as a God to update those degrees and bring them into real time. I get it. But see, that's a simple-minded individual who wants to focus on some nonsense and some bullshit and not focus on the overall breakdown of what this is talking about. All right? That's important. So when you get into, and I'm not going to go through them, the diameter of the planet Earth. Yeah, we know the Earth is constantly contracting and expanding, so that's changed. We know the amount of original people on the planet Earth, that's constantly changing as we speak. People are being born and dying every day. I get it. But I'm not going to focus and waste my time on that, all right? Because to me, that shit is irrelevant. But if that's you want to waste your time on that, that's fine. Okay? But a couple of things I want to point out here. Obviously, where the term 5% came from. So I'm going to go on the 1 to 40, degrees 14 to 16. I will go through that real quickly, just because I think it explains one of the core foundations of the teachings. Degree number 14 in the 1 to 40. Who are the 85%? They are the uncivilized people, poison animal eaters, slaves of a mental death and power, people who do not know the true and living God is, or their origin in this world, who worship something they know not what. People who are really led in the wrong direction and are hard to be led in the right direction. So the 85% is where that was the majority of the masses. It was considered the deaf, dumb, and the blind, those who didn't know. We can correlate that today to people who are in the world, people who are lost, who are not awake or conscious, and I hate to use that word, but I'm using the term you can grasp, or aware on any level, right? That was the 85%. Degree 15, right, and the 1 to 40, which would actually be degree 79 or less than 79 out of the 120. Who are the 10%? They are the rich slave makers of the poor, who teach the poor lies to believe that the almighty, true, and living God is a spook and cannot be seen by the physical eye, otherwise known as the bloodsuckers of the poor. Your 10%, all right, are your people who have high power, your hierarchy, your people who are responsible for enforcing religion, who control politics, the economy, the natural resources, who really know the truth, but they keep the truth hidden from the deaf, dumb, and the blind. And these are the people that feed and give life to the 85%. These are the people that control the media, that control music, that control movies, all these systems of indoctrination that keep with what we call on this path people in a conformist state of mind. Now, this is how I look at it in this day and time, right? So it goes that deep with who the 10% are. And then you have the 5%, which I would consider us on this path. And who are the 5%? Of this poor part of the planet. Or did they say the 5% of the poor part of the planet Earth? At that time when the degrees were revealed, the planet Earth compared to United States compared to other parts of the world was not poor, was not rich, as opposed to, there's no gold like that here in other countries. So it was considered one of the poorer parts of the planet Earth. So this is where you get the term poor righteous teachers. I've heard stupid ass people refute this. Why would you call yourself a poor righteous teacher? It didn't mean they were referring to themselves as poor individuals if they were identifying with where they were at that time on the planet in this world and where we are currently. Because these teachers came to the lost and found here in America, right? Some refer to it as the tribe of Shabazz, right? This is what the lessons teach, right? So who are the 5% on the poor part of the planet Earth? These are the poor righteous teachers who do not believe in the teaching of the 10%, for they are all wise and who know the true and living God and teach that the almighty true and living God is Allah, Almighty Allah, supreme being, black man from Asia, and teach freedom, justice, and equality to all the human families, This is why they don't refer to themselves as a pro-black organization. Knowledge itself is open to anybody on the planet, any of the human families that's willing to accept it. So what it really, in essence, is what they would refer to in the verbiage, a devil, and we know that's a mythological term, would be anybody who went against being a civilizer was considered the enemy. If you didn't have knowledge of self and you weren't civilized, you were considered the enemy. So that can apply to anybody today. You could be black, white, Latino, Asian, etc. Okay? Then it went on to say, equality of all the human family, otherwise known as civilized people, also Muslim and Muslim sons. Okay? So there's the breakdown of where you get this whole thing, 5%, who the 5%, who the 85%, who the 10% are. This is how Father Allah viewed. Now, this is in NOI's teachings too, because the degrees are pretty much the same for the most part, right? That's in the 1 to 40, which is probably the core foundation of the lessons, the teachings, and the degrees, all right? I'm going to finish with a few more things here. I'm not going to stay on too long tonight. I know I always say that shit, and it never happens. Then I'll get to your questions and your comments. Hopefully you got some questions. And if you're not familiar with this topic, I think you should research it. Interesting if you decide. So now what I want to finish with the last structure of the degree. So that was the 1 to 40. I want to go into the universal flag, and then I want to go into the actual facts, the solar facts and actual facts. We'll get into that in a section. Manifestation of the universal flag. There's actually 2 sections on this I want to break down. Hold on. Obviously, that's this flag right here. Very, very, very occultic in nature when you really look at it, if you understand it. I had something here. Hold on. Okay. All right. Knowing our flag. A little history on this that I didn't go into last time. In the universal flag, in 1965, the law instructed all the firstborns to either go back to school or get a job, right? What he told them. You wouldn't hear that from a lot of these conscious leaders back then, okay? This is the first Borns of Medina did without hesitation, while the majority of us enrolled in youth leadership and training programs, at that time sponsored by the Office of Economic Opportunity. Some of us enrolled in educational and cultural programs. I'm going to skip this. Let's get into the flag. I'm sorry. That was the beginning. Knowing our flag, the 5-pointed star symbolizes knowledge. Right? I don't know if you can see it there, but you see and it's in the middle there. I know it's kind of dark. You can't see it. That's by the 7 there, right? So look how when you look at this, we can look at this on this path as a sigil, a symbol that emanates certain levels of power, consciousness, knowledge that opens and activates portions of your psyche. I know when I look at it, just by the breakdown of it, it activates certain energies within me. That's how deep this flag is as opposed to other shit. And that's my opinion. But it goes on to say, it symbolized knowledge, the seed, the child with the power, the supreme knowledge that was manifested and revealed to us by Almighty God Allah. It is solid black. The crescent moon symbolizes wisdom, the woman without child. It shows reflected light, truth and knowledge, and is not yet at its fullest equality. All this from this flag, right? It also symbolizes the divine wisdom that was manifested by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, revealed to us by Almighty God Allah. It is solid yellow. Together, the star and crescent stand for knowledge and wisdom, which is the unity of knowing it and speaking it, teaching it. It also symbolizes earth, woman with the child, a planet that has life, and the dominance of the woman has over the seed, the child of knowledge, while it is young, and has been the symbol of freedom, justice, and equality since the awakening of Islam in North America. The 7 have 7 sides. It symbolizes the original man, the true and living God, the supreme being, Almighty God Allah.
Since the very creation of mathematics, 7 has been the mathematical terminology for the creator of the universe. My interest first in this, I saw this 1988, Follow the Leader album, when Rakim was wearing it on his jacket. They did a video shoot. I mentioned this in the past. And I remember seeing it for the first time. I didn't know what it was back then because shit, I was what? 16, 17 years old, wasn't familiar with it. And that was my first introduction to it. I had heard about it a year before the 5% Nation, wasn't familiar with the flag though, right? So that's the beginning. Okay, let me finish with the rest of this and then I'll go on to that before I continue. All right. I forgot where I left off here. Okay, here we go. It shows the unification of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, man, woman, and child, and shows the authority of Allah over the planets and the stars. But you are Allah, you're God, right? And the proper order of the universe. The 7 symbolizes the male seed in full bloom. It shows that God must be the Most High, the master of wisdom, culture, and equality at all times, because they are 6 and can never dominate Allah. So they must remain 6 or distill back to whence it came. Thus, no part of the crescent moon should ever show over the top of heaven. And that's why you see it. I know it's hard to see this behind the 7 there. You see the crescent moon, right? The white background symbolizes the white clouds of deception that have drowned out people in the sea of ignorance, right? And feeble attempts of the wicked to conceal the true and living God, which is the Son of Man, not a spook God, not a mystery God. The cipher circle around the Allah crescent star is black, the original color of the sun, right? What do we say? The black sun is something we utilize on this path all the time, or the aspect of the pandemonium Mandela, and where a lot of these demonic beings come from, or these gods, as they manifest from the black sun. The black sun also has a connection with what we call on this path the black flame of Set, right? Where all God consciousness manifests, okay? Right? The black flame represents on this path what we call all the gifts of Set that emanate from it, which give us that knowledge of self and that understanding, right? So this shit is encoded in here. Say, because the sun was originally black, right? All right, then it goes on to say, the original color of the sun was black. Anything that burns that hot and that long can't be yellow. This symbolizes the sun, the universal symbol of truth and light. And this is why the ancient Egyptians revered the sun, because they knew without the sun, life would cease to exist, okay? The sun, the universal symbol of truth and light, whose power can evaporate all clouds of deception, lies. The 8 points are the symbol of the ever-expanding universe, right? When you look at the 8 points, right? And symbolize the rays of the sun and the speed and distance that the truth is capable of traveling. These are the 2 sides to each point. The left is black. This represents the original black man. The right side is gold. The gold represents brown. Now, if you look at the picture I had in the advertisement, of the video, that's breaking down all these colors. The gold represents the brown and yellow seeds, from the first of the brown to the last of yellow. Just as Jacob separated the seeds 200 years from black to brown, 200 years from brown to yellow, and 200 years from yellow to Caucasian. Allah taught us that each brother should have a seed. Thus he reunited the seeds until they are one. The 8 points are the sign of he who is the master builder of rain, snow, hail, and earthquakes. That's you. There are 16 sections of the points, 1 for each year and degree that our seed's child must master before he is at the age of self-responsibility and required to teach civilization. I have given you basic knowledge of the flag and its history. A complete understanding would have to cover listen to this shit, would have to cover every minute, math, term, and angle from Solomon's child to the compass square to the galaxy M83. However, I hope this will answer most of the questions that the gods have been requesting. Right? A word to the wild, be wise, beware of false knowledge is more dangerous than ignorance. Now, that came from a personal breakdown. Now, in the degrees, real quick, here was the breakdown that we had. That was a more personal, in-depth breakdown. But what one have the manifestation of the universal flag that we were given in the degrees. Now, this is the this is the key thing here. That breakdown there, if you can't see the occult hidden meanings in that, and if you can't see that Father Allah was tapped into a higher understanding, that's why I say he was ahead of his time. To have this type of breakdown. Now remember, this was a breakdown back in the early to mid 60s. All right. This was dangerous shit. There was nobody back then talking about this type of shit. There was nobody coming that raw with it. Now, the manifestation of the universal flag. The universal flag of the 5% circular consists of the sun, 7. This is the basic. This is what we were required to, we had to know in order to get to wear your flag. It consists of the sun, 7, moon, and star. This shows the universal state of being symbolic to earth, man, woman, and child. Stands in position to show man entering the womb or equality of the woman, wisdom, right? And this is why you hear the term, we used to call our women not only earth, but wisdom, right? Our wisdom. The star represents the understanding of God and wisdom's unity. The 5 points of the star shows that it possesses God's divine understanding, giving it power of elevation to the supreme guidance of the universe, which is the mind, right? Notice, all is mental, mental is all. The universe is mental. We teach that on the occult, right? That's right here in the breakdown of the flag. You can't tell me this shit can't be applied from an occult esoterical perspective. Now, again, this is my understanding of it now in this day and time, all right? All right. When you add 7 and 5, you get knowledge, wisdom when you go into the mathematics, right? You get 1 knowledge, 2 wisdom, right? And see how there has a language that communicates. The alphabets in the mathematics is a language in itself. I can't even explain it, right? And you'll see God's knowledge being born in the culture, Islam, which advocates truth and righteousness. For within truth is power of God's understanding. This is why the star is understanding and has 5 points. The points in our flag represent the universal builder. And within each point, you have a light side and a dark side. This is only showing and proving the original 16 shades of black. 8 shades of black, 8 shades of yellow. These are the 4 long points and 4 short points. This was science right here. The distance from the short point to the long point is 45 degrees. There's 8 of them. 45 times 8 is what? 360. What's 360? 360 is a cipher, right? So 300, now 3 and 6 is what? 9. What is 9 when you go back? 3 and 6 is 9. What is 9 according to the mathematics? Born. And then what's 3 and 6? And after the 3 and 6 is 9, you got 0. Born cipher. Right? I can do this shit all day. You can speak, this has its own language. Now, you can't tell me this is a coincidence. We know on this path there's no such thing as a coincidence. That's to me, this is what separates Father Allah from any other individual out there. If you really understand what these lessons are talking about. I'm not talking about look at it from I don't want to say religious because that's not the right term. I'm not saying look at it I don't look at this from a traditional way that maybe the average 5% or nation of gods on earth would. I don't think any of them really do anymore because they've really updated and brought these degrees into real time. There are some old school heads that I still know from back in the day. They're very traditional. So it just depends on, I guess, who you would run into. All right, so those 8 points times 45 equals 360 degrees. 3 and 6 is 9. 9 is born. 0 cipher. We have born cipher, right? Showing that our flag is complete within its culture. The distance between the long points are 90 degrees. Showing Islam as complete, known to born. Now it's born, right? Now, there's something in here that the last 2 things I want to do, and then I'll finish up. I want to read the 7 characteristics of a wise man, and this applies to females too. And we should utilize these things of how we conduct ourselves on this path. If you call yourself an occultist, a left-hand path practitioner, a black adept, because essentially all those things you're saying you are a god. That's basically what you're saying. The 7 characteristics of a wise man. A wise man always acknowledges the atmosphere around him. A wise man always allows his opponent to cast his wisdom, and after all, this is very Sith-like, right? We talk about the Sith. This is a Sith principle right here. We just talked about this in the Sith video I did a couple videos back. A wise man always allows his opponent to cast his wisdom, and after all has been said, he will then begin to manifest supreme wisdom. That's a Sith principle. Let your enemy come forth first. Let him reveal first, right? A wise man is patient at all times and will not tolerate any insufficient understanding. We don't tolerate any bullshit or false information when we don't conform just because everybody else is doing it. A wise man will always conduct himself in a unique manner according to his culture. 5, a wise man has culture and refinement within himself. Starts always within the self first, not outside the self, not following something or somebody. It starts within the self, right? A wise man will not copy the actions of a savage, regardless to whom or what. You can always distinguish a wise man from a fool because he is God. He does not speak on things he does not know. He is not hostile to answer questions. He asks and answers intelligent questions, intelligent ones. He does not interrupt. He speaks on first things first. He admits that which he does not know. He always acknowledges the truth. All right? The 7 characteristics of a wise man. The last part of the degrees, the very last, yes, and people I've heard, are these facts 100% accurate? No, they're not. And they shouldn't be taken as. Were they at that time? Yes. You had the actual and the solar facts, okay? Which I'm not going to get into. I went into that on the last videos I did on this, all right? So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. I'm going to finish with a little stuff in the chat. Again, I'm going to keep this. I don't want to go past the 10 o'clock hour. So hopefully you guys have some questions on what we discussed. So there's a brief history of Father Allah and a little bit about the history of the 5% Nation. And as I said in the beginning of the video, I have the utmost respect for the nation of the gods on earth. I have the utmost respect and love for Father Allah. This is my perspective on it. I'm not speaking for any god of earth, or I'm not representing the 5% Nation, and I am no longer what one would consider an active member. So I want to make that clear. I do still utilize the teachings of the 120, the teachings of Father Allah. I think that's something that stays with you forever. I utilize it in my own way on the path that I'm on now. And I said that in the beginning of the video, just in case you came in late. This is my perspective on how I apply the teachings from an occult and esoteric perspective. So I want to make that clear. I'm not trying to validate how it's interpreted on a mainstream level. And as I said, I still have many brothers that I associate with that are 5%ers that I grew up with going back to high school days. And we have some nice conversations about this. We're not always in agreement, and that's the beauty of it. That's what makes us God. But it makes for interesting conversation. So regardless of where I go on my journey, and as I said, this was my first introduction to any form of spirituality back in the 80s. It'll always be a part of me. It'll always be embedded in me. And if you listen to me talk in my videos, you can see the influence in a good way. You'll see some of the verbiage that I use comes from my experience back in the day with this. And what that says to me is how powerful and impactful it still is after all these years. And as I said, the 5% nation of gods and earths, as they refer to now, are to me the only group that has stood the test of time. They've remained true to their core teachings, but have been able to change and update and bring those teachings into today's time, but not losing their core value or the essence of their teachings. And that's a hard thing to do. You understand? So anyway, that kind of completes what I want to talk about. I don't see much in the chat. You guys don't really have nothing to say. Maybe some of you just are not familiar, but let me see what's here. If not, we will wrap it up because I do got some personal work I would like to get to tonight. All right, so peace and greetings to everybody. So if I didn't greet you, Blade, I know I greeted all you guys earlier. Blade of Asteroid, love my fro. Dion Thompson, Brother Duma, Mandela Bourne, Blair Jones. Blair, I sent you an email earlier. No, I haven't checked since. Sent you all the information on the conference. I know you're fully registered. I sent you all the information, everything you need to know. Make sure you got that. If you haven't responded back to me already, just confirm you got it. I told you what you need to bring, how to be prepared, and just the basics. So I want to make sure you got that information. Brother Angel, and the Black Flame 11. I don't know who's in here from the Black Flame 11, the NYC crew. Look soon. I'm going to be putting out our next video call to kind of go to phase 2 of the next event. Let me throw that out there real quick. If you're in the New York City area, we have formed a good group that started that night. There's more now, but we call ourselves the Black Flame 11. 11 symbolic of the Kapothic tree. It's more of a science, and we'll break that down another time. If you are in the New York City area and you would like to be part of the work we're getting ready to, or we started already there and getting ready to continue, send me an email. But I want to make it clear. Don't come out if you're a curious seeker. If we see you join the group and you're not participating as far as work-wise, we're going to ask you to leave the group. I just want to make that clear. It's not a Mickey Mouse club. It's not a social club. We're not interested in socializing. I mean, we socialize, but it's not all about socialize. It's about putting shit together, getting work done to get results. So if you come in and you're not doing that, you're going to be asked to leave. But if you really want to be a part of that and you're in the New York City area, shoot me an email and we can link you into our next video call. So everybody, if you're anybody in here from the Black Flame 11 crew from NYC, I'm going to do it again on a Wednesday. It seems like Wednesday was the best night for everybody. So look for an upcoming link in the next maybe week or two, or maybe first week in October. Shoot me an email if you guys got any suggestions. But I know Wednesday we all agreed was good. So I just want to throw that out there since I see a bunch of you in here. All right. What else we got? Oh, Blade of Asteroid. All right, you're in Brooklyn, brother. You need to get down. You need to get down with the Black Flame 11 if you can. Brother Duma, I know you can relate to this topic, Duma, because I know you got similar background. And I know you were influenced to a degree by these teachings. But I'm telling you, man, if you're familiar with the 120 of the 5%, go back and look at it from an occult perspective now. Some powerful shit. It's something you could still utilize in this day and time. Something you could still utilize in this day and time. All right. That's true, Matthew Watson. I was talking earlier. See, that's what most Black people in America are 4th generation Nubians or Africans, which is a weaker part of the genetic structure. That's fact. Now, we know scientifically and factually and historically, not everybody came over here on slave ships. That's a myth, right? That's just basic history dictates that, right? Some people were already here. Yeah, we know the history of the Moors and the Olmecs. I mentioned a few weeks back a great author and teacher on the Olmecs, the Aztec, and the original Amexums, right? In my opinion, who broke that down on an elegant level and a very wise level. And you can find still his books are available on the internet. I think he was downgraded because his wife was Caucasian, and I don't think he gets the due respect as Ivan Van Sertima. His book, Early African Presence in America, he's got a lot of books showing and explaining what I was just talking about. He's been an influence on me as far as history and doing research in that area over the years. A lot of people have stolen his information. Believe it or not, and I pointed out in a video I did a while back, he actually broke down how Christianity was stolen from Egypt, something Dr. York stole. You can find he was the one that used Karast, right? and Dr. York started a church at that time back in the early 2000s, the Egyptian Church of Christ or Christ. He was the first one to bring that in his books. He was another individual, I think, from a historical standpoint, was on a whole nother level. But I think because his wife, that's just my opinion, because he had a Caucasian wife, I don't think he gets due process. You could pull videos up of him with Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, videos from the 70s and the 80s. But Ivan Van Sertima, he was dropping some jewels, man. If you're not familiar with his work, check him out. Check him out. All right. Brother Jay Jizzle, I gotta link up with you, see if you're gonna be available at the end of October. What else we got? Oh shit, do me. Yeah, I didn't even talk about the Book of Life, Book of Wisdom, and all that. I'll revisit this. There's more. Again, I'll revisit this from time to time. Again, I did 2 good videos on this several months back. Just going to the archives, but that was exclusively on the 120. So if you're interested in further on this, go back to that, and I will revisit this time to time because there's more. Today, I just wanted to focus on some of the history of Father Allah and the 5%. And possibly there's a brother I would like to reach out to. Maybe I can get him to come on live, and maybe he can add on to this build. I'll try to reach out to him and see if he's willing to do that. All right. Yes, there are, as Duma pointed out, there are slight alterations from the NOI lessons. Some of the wording in the 1 to 10. The Nation of Islam will still use the skunk of the planet Earth. They don't use that in the 1 to 10 and the 5%. Some of the wording you will see, it was slightly adjusted. That is true. Yeah, we all group hopped over the years, brother. We all did the group hop thing because we were trying to find ourselves, you know? That's what it was back then. And probably hip hop was a strong influence on that, because you got to remember, during those times, you had groups obviously like Public Enemy, Positively Black. You had a lot of conscious groups that were out at that time that were, then obviously you had the God Rakim that was dropping the signs. Big Daddy Kane was dropping it. As we know, he's a 5%er. Then obviously Brand Nubian. You had a lot of rap groups that were influenced back then. Shit, it seemed like half or more. Lakeem Shabazz. I used to love Lakeem Shabazz. He was 5%. He still is now. Matter of fact, if you go onto the 5%, the Nation of Gods and Earth channel from a law school, Lakeem Shabazz is still around, still studying 5%. There was and then there were those that were, hardcore members practicing 5%ers, and then there were those that were influenced. I mean, I can think of a bunch of other rappers that alluded to it, Gangstar. I mean, the list goes on and on. That's why back then, and that's why I say that's kind of what probably influenced and brought me in, because the culture and the music at the time, which was so different than to what it is right now. Obviously, it's so fucking different now. Now it's like, I don't even know what the fuck it is now. Myself and Brother Ravana Noon on the 27th, we'll be going to be doing a show on hip hop and the occult, and we're going to be going in. It's going to be a fun show. We're going to be going in depth on that. We're going to get to the essence of it, the core. We're going to revisit, them times, back in them times in the 80s. And man, hip hop culture was magical in itself back then. As I said, that was given as a gift to the youth to speed up their intellect. And then the powers that be saw how it was educating the youth, and then it turned into what we see today. Majority of it today is pimps and hoes and drug dealers and bling bling and all this crazy shit that it is today. But the 5% influence was felt hardcore through hip hop during them time. Poor Righteous Teachers, King Son, and they were well known, members of the 5% Nation. YZ. I can go through a lot of these rap. These were rappers I grew up listening to, and as I got more exposed to the culture, I said, damn. Man, all these dudes are into it. And then, there was that big thing a couple years back with Jay-Z was wearing this pennant. Fuck Jay-Z. That's all. Forget all that. Don't get caught up in all that spookism. All right? What else we got? I think that's it. Just in time. Yeah. Trying to drop a little weight, Justin. Trying to watch what I eat at nighttime. My issue was, well, obviously, exercise and being in the gym was never my issue. Diet has been something I've always fucking struggled with. The sweet tooth, I've learned to cut back on that. That's always been my struggle. Always had a sweet tooth. And then eating the wrong shit late at night was always an issue. You're watching sports. I'm a sports head. I'll be watching the game. And if I do eat something now, it's something that's not going to just sit in the stomach and put on the pounds. It gets tougher as you get older, people. You know this. I'm 48 years old. The metabolism ain't as fast as it used to be. And those that know what I'm talking about, it seemed like once I got into my early 30s, the metabolism just shut the fuck down. Because I remember back in the day, shit, when I was a teenager in my early 20s, I could eat anything. I ain't put on not a damn pound. Now you got to watch, man. As you get older, you got to take care of yourself. You unfortunately, who doesn't love eating and love food? But unfortunately, as you get older, it don't get any easy, brother. And I found a lot of what you drink. I had a misconception of the right things to drink. I'm not just talking about water. So yeah, you got to have knowledge of self in that. Not being fanatical, just being, common sense and sound mind and sound body. Because unfortunately, you got people out here that turn veganism and diet into a religion. So I don't want to go fanatical with that. But it's more, you should take care of yourself regardless of what age you are, but it becomes tougher when you get older. I can tell you that right now. Those that are in my age group and older know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I've always, and I did videos on it, I've always said, get on a regular exercise program. You don't need to be in the gym 7 days a week, 3-4 hours a day. I get there 4 days a week, and I exercise about an hour to hour and a half, and I change it up. And you got to be educated on, as you get older, all that heavy weight training isn't necessary. It's actually more damaging to you. You got to learn to mix it up. I thought I was doing the right thing for years. Going hard on body parts different days as you get older actually makes you more puffy, and it doesn't really lean you out and keep the mass solid. So you got to know these things because your metabolism and your testosterone levels change as you get older. It's important for us older guys. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you what, I don't feel like I'm 48 years old. I'll tell you that because I can go in there, stamina, cardio, good. I can hang with the best of them. Me and my brother Jack worked out one time, and we was on that thing. We was on the elliptical for an hour straight. Once you catch your wind, doing an hour, 60, 70 minutes of cardio is no problem for me. But you got to learn to surprise your body with that too. You can't go every day, long extended amounts of cardio because that can decrease your testosterone levels, which I didn't know years ago. So it's about surprising the body when you get older. Now, for you young boys, yeah, you guys go in there and go hard and do all the crazy weightlifting. And I see some of the shit y'all do in the gym. I can't do that shit no more. I found it's more effective with doing the right type of workout. You can get in and out of the gym about an hour and you're good. But I was in there doing an hour and a half, 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 hours, and that's no good. It can actually decrease testosterone levels. We don't produce as much, obviously, as we get older. These are facts, But anyway, that's a whole nother story. All right, what else we got? Yeah, Blade of Astareth. Yeah, I'm glad that you're new to the topic and you found something of interest. Now, is this topic going to be for everybody? Probably not. But I would suggest look into it. And you don't need to be a full-fledged member of the 5% Nation to study the lessons. They're available. Get them. And see what you get out of it. All right. Appreciate that, brother Tizzer. Try that. Appreciate class. Negro Fuego. Mandela Born. Coming with the fire. Black fire. Oh yeah. Sun. Would you change your name to? I know who it is, but Sun Kissed. Okay, X-Clan. Yeah, can't forget about X-Clan. I actually met X-Clan at the Hempstead bus terminal. I ran into them one time. And that was in 1990 at the peak when they were real popular. Yeah, X Clan was very into that. X Clan was they were more. Yeah, I mean they were very conscious, obviously, of the lessons, but they were bringing that Kemetic consciousness. They were one of the first ones. Then that spawned, obviously, Tribe Called Quest, Jungle Brothers. That was a different level of conscious movement. They were more on the African Kemetic type of tip. Like, I love the Jungle Brothers. Jungle Brothers' second album is a classic. Go listen to that album. Again, we're going to get into a lot of this on the 27th. That album, done by the forces of nature, that album is, man, the beats were ahead of their time, and the shit that, man, I'm going to listen to some Jungle Brothers tomorrow. I haven't listened to the Jungle Brothers in a while. That's going to be playing tomorrow in the car. But man, that second album, classic. I played the shit out of that album. I had it on vinyl. I played the song Black Woman on there, classic. That beat is fire. That album is a classic. But that spawned that whole, again, Tribe Called Quest, the Jungle Brothers, De La Soul, X Clan. That took it to a whole nother level. Yeah, and that was around 89, 90. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, very, very, very interesting, man. Got me reminiscing too, man. Anyway, that's all I see. I think we're gonna cut this just a few minutes short. Not too many questions. That's okay. A lot of you may not be familiar with the topic, but again, before I depart, shout out and respect, utmost respect to all the nation of gods and earth. Much love and respect to Father Allah. Always will have the utmost respect for him. And again, I did this video like the other two out of respect and love for the nation. I know not everybody might agree with this video, and that's fine, but it was done with the best intentions. I want to make that clear. And it was done with all due respect. So peace to all the gods and earths. If you need to reach me for any of the upcoming events, a reading or a consultation, you see the email in the description box. Remember, subscribe to the channel. If you want notifications, hit the toll bell, hit the like button, please, because that expands the channel on the search engines. It reaches more people. So the more people that hit the like button, it'll expand the channel. We'll appreciate that. If you would like to actually support the channel, it's monetized. You see the money symbol there, or you can go to PayPal and use the same email address, khnum19@gmail.com. Always greatly appreciated. Not necessary, but always greatly appreciated. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me this evening. Not sure what we're going to do Thursday, but you know me, I'll come up with something. So again, peace to all the gods and earth. Peace to all the gods and goddesses on the path doing the real work, and we will talk soon. Peace.